Hey everyone. So I wanted to welcome you first off for spending your Sunday with me and accommodating the online event here. I'm super excited to be able to share with you guys what's happening. So just as a little preface, we've ran this workshop before, both online and in person at Columbia in the past. We've ran it at Cornell. We've run it at Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, INSEAD, so pretty much schools all around the world. And this is probably one of people's favorite workshops when it comes to deciding if consulting is for them, as well as if and how to get into consulting as a result. So I'm super excited to be able to share the information with you guys today. So just a little bit of background, we'll get into more, is that this is usually a full program that I run that lasts much longer, but I'm condensing it all into the 8 hours that we have. There'll be plenty of breaks. And the cool part is that because it's online, you literally could be taking a break and I wouldn't know it, but we'll build in some breaks and some Q&A, so it'll be as interactive as possible. So I'm super excited to be able to have that with you guys. So to begin with is I want to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be covering today. So in particular today, actually, give me a sec. I'm going to share my volume as well. Give me a sec. Awesome. Okay, so people will be trickling in a bit. Awesome. So for today, I want to talk about your pathway into consulting. So my main goal for you today is to decide that if consulting is for you, to realize that you don't, for example, need a brand name on your resume. You don't need a high GPA from your undergrad, and you don't need any business experience. In fact, a lot of the stories that you're going to hear today are people who don't have any business experience. So even if you have an internship or you have some working experience, you're way ahead of a lot of the people that my team and I work with. So love to know, as in, it seems like you guys are a diverse group. I'm pretty much lucky enough to have emailed everyone here. So it seems like we have a really diverse group today. So we have a couple people who are pursuing either their MBA full-time or part-time. We have a lot of people who are master's students. We have PhDs on the call, as well as we have people who are about to apply to consulting, as well as people who are just starting the journey. And for some of the PhDs, I know you guys are in your first or second year, so kudos to you. Also kind of sad to know that you have given up on science already, but all jokes aside, I'm happy to have you guys all here today. So what's going to end up happening when we have our chat today? Oh, awesome. Hey, Sarah, thanks for sharing information there. As in, we have working experience as well in terms of other people as well. So today's workshop is going to be geared towards every single one of the profiles, because if you submitted your answers before this workshop, I'm going to be able to answer those today as well. So my goal is that I want to make sure to do everything in my power to be able to help you, one, decide if consulting is for you, and two, get as much value out of it so that your route to consulting is going to be as smooth as possible, and that there's a proven plan as well as a structure for how you do it. So why this event is different is two things. First off is I am a former Bain consultant and a recruiter versus a current. So when you go to a current Bain, McKinsey, BCG, or any other type of event, one of the things that you'll notice is that there's certain things that people cannot say because they have to sign paperwork. For example, for some of you, you might be thinking, you know what, Davis, I really want to do work in the field that I'm studying, like let's say healthcare or life sciences. Which firm or which city would do that? If I was from Bain, San Francisco, and this for example, San Francisco, we do a lot of healthcare, but if we didn't do healthcare, I would still try to persuade you that Bain did a lot of healthcare versus if BCG did more healthcare, right? So I can't promote the competitor. Second is, if you ask me questions such as, which cities are the easiest cities to get interviews at? So there are actually cities within McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and a bunch of other firms as well that are easier to get interviews at, statistically just easier. I wouldn't be able to share that with you. And I wouldn't be able to tell you which firms have, let's say, less travel. So if you're someone who wants to stay local to say in New York, that you would be able to have a lot of your projects within New York versus, let's say, flying off to Athens, Greece. And then the third thing I wouldn't be able to do is to be able to tell you which firm or which office, for example, has the best work-life balance. So if you're trying to also have time with, let's say, your significant other, if you have a kid, or if you just want to spend time in the city and just not work the whole time, there are certain cities that on average work less hours. So I wouldn't be able to share any of that. So which offices are easier to get into, which firms does what, as well as which city has the less travel or more travel depending on your preferences will be shared today. So I'm excited for that. And the second big thing is that even though my company and I do have a service that we render, one of the things is that there's no way for you to work with us on this call. So even if you're super impressed with this presentation, you literally cannot work with our company because there is an application process and interview process before you're even able to work with our team. So literally there's nothing for me to sell on this call. So everything else is all educational and very inspirational. We'll talk about what my team does throughout the process so that you get a gauge of that. But there's no way for you to be able to buy. There's no buy now button on our website. So feel free to share as much as you want in terms of what we're trying to do. And as a result, we're going to be able to learn a lot about the concept. So that's what makes today's presentation different from other ones. So my goal for you is that there's going to be 3 things. First, if management consulting is the right career path for you. Second, how to make a resume and application that stands out from other applicants. So even if you lack a big brand name on your resume, a high GPA, or lack of business experience, how you can stand out and get an interview. And third, we're going to talk about how to walk into your interviews feeling confident, even if you're just starting your preparation today, or even if you haven't started your preparation yet. So today's workshop is for a few people. First off, it's for anyone who is considering management consulting as a career path. It's for anyone who's decided that career consulting is potentially a path for them, but they're worried if your application will stand out. And finally, it's for anyone who's decided that consulting is a career path, but you're worried that your interview skills might not be enough to land an interview, or perhaps you had an interview in the past, but it didn't go as well as you planned and you were short of following the offer. So we're going to cover all 3 of these today. And the fact that we've ran this workshop for over a year and updated it at various schools, a lot of the information you're going to find here is going to be applicable to you. So there can be some stuff that you feel is quite advanced, but if you're advanced, there's some material here that will be new to you as well. And if you stay until the very end, I have a very surprise for you in terms of some bonuses for making it to the online workshop and enduring 8 hours of education and inspiration on a Sunday. So if you stay to the very end after lunch, after everything concludes, I have a couple bonuses for you as well. But I also want to say that this workshop could be the start of the rest of your career. So in a minute, I'm about to share with you, and let me know if you can't hear the audio, a participant of a workshop who attended the same workshop that you're attending a year ago. And right now she is at McKinsey. And she wants to talk about how she used this workshop to begin the path towards going into McKinsey. So hopefully that's pretty exciting for you guys, for those of you who, for McKinsey, is a top choice for you. So let me know if you can't hear the audio on this one.
Ultimately, like working hard, having Davis there, I was able to get an internship at McKinsey, which I never would have imagined, like in my wildest dreams. My name is Carolyn. I can talk a bit about the first time I met Davis. He gave a workshop, like a crash course basically on how to start the consulting process and what casing was like. I remember like one of the first questions I asked Davis, where do I find casing books? You know, that's how lost I was. When he gave that workshop, that was like the first time I had any insight into how do I even start and what do I do? He was super friendly. He told me there were no such things as a stupid question. And so I felt like this was the right person to come to help me through this process. Someone who's really easy to talk to and always down to help with any questions or be there for you whenever you're having a hard time, which definitely happens throughout the recruitment cycle. My first case was a mess. I think it took 2 hours and it was pretty basic, like market entry case. The point of it was I had no idea what was going on. Throughout the course of it, you definitely hit points where you think there's no way you could possibly see yourself getting better. You have someone there for you who helps you set up a good foundation. Whenever you have any question, I just called him randomly out of the blue because I didn't know how to write frameworks, you know. Just through a 30-minute call, we got over this mental block of me not having any idea whatsoever how to write a framework. And ultimately, like working hard, having Davis there, I was able to get an internship at McKinsey, which I never would have imagined in my wildest dreams of getting as a junior. I mean, that itself, you can objectively say is the fruits of working with Davis, becoming more confident in yourself and your own like intellectual capabilities, thinking faster and quicker and more creatively. I think those are also things that I gained like through the process itself.
All right, so making sure. Could I get were you guys able to hear that? Could I get someone in the chat just to confirm that audio worked for you guys and everything? Awesome, thank you. Great, so you just saw Carolyn's example here, is that literally when we had this workshop a year ago, for her, she knew nothing about the consulting process. All she knew was she had this inkling idea that consulting was for her, except she didn't know if she was meant to be a consultant or how to even start the process. She didn't know about the resume, didn't know about the casing. And of course, took all of this and was able to transform it into an internship this summer in San Francisco, McKinsey, which is one of the top hardest to get into offices, especially to do it as an internship where there's less positions than there are full-time. So my goal for you today is to be able to have that same confidence and to have that same mentality so that you can have that same confidence going into your own process. So a little bit about me. So I am the founder of My Consulting Offer. And yes, this is, for those of you who are wondering, yes, I do use this same photo for my dating profiles. And yes, it does work. It's not about this guy over here. It's about these letters over here that really attracts people. But I founded My Consulting Offer back in 2017. And since then, a couple of statistics about us is that we have worked with over 400 people to help them get started on their consulting path. But I wanted to share a little bit more about my story and how I ended up coming to even become a management consultant, in the hopes that you realize that you don't have to have a traditional path in order to get into consulting. So my story actually starts with my family. So back after the Vietnam War, shortly afterwards, my family immigrated to the US shortly before I was born. So they were political refugees. And as many of you might know, immigration is already hard, but being a political refugee it means that you don't get to particularly choose where you want to live, nor do you have the finances. So it's not like my family could have said, we want to live in Manhattan in Midtown. That wasn't an option. So we ended up picking a spot and getting sponsored in a small town right outside of Atlanta. The problem was that the town was one of the poorest communities in the United States. So a building in my neighborhood would look like this. And yes, this is pretty much the outskirts of it. In fact, we were so poor that we were pretty much always on the news for some crime that was happening. And throughout the process, you come to realize that my worldview was pretty skewed when I first started, because I grew up and my neighborhood is very diverse. It was 85% Black, about 10% Hispanic, 3% Caucasian, and then 2% Asian. And the Asians, we would always joke, were the jungle Asians. So it was the Cambodians, the Lao, the Vietnamese, the Thai, the Filipinos. So my joke, or my reality of it, was that I don't think I met anyone who was Korean, Chinese, Indian, or any of the other non-jungle Asian races until I was in high school and competing in math competitions. So my path wasn't very clear, as in it was the point where our high school and our community, our school system was at one point called the worst school system in the US. So imagine having over 100,000 school systems all across the US and your school system is ranked the worst in the US. So not the typical path into consulting. And in fact, for a lot of when I grew up, for many of you, you probably went to high school and then college was always a destination for where you wanted to be when you finished high school. For my community, that wasn't the case. In fact, if you graduated high school, there was a huge ceremony for you. In fact, there was block parties thrown, and it's just the roads just shut down just to have graduation day for our high schools, just because that was such a humongous event, because not everyone gets a chance to go to college. And so as a result, when I grew up, I remember my third grade teacher, Ms. Britton, she would ask one day, it's like, all right, class, what do you guys want to do? And people are like, oh, I got to be like my dad, be a construction worker. I want to be a policeman. I want to be at the Walmart as the manager. It's like pretty much what their parents were doing. And we didn't have typical, I didn't realize it until college, where a lot of my friends were like, wait, so when you're in third grade, you're supposed to say you want to be a doctor, an astronaut, a teacher, a lawyer. But it's like, well, we don't really expose to those types of environments. And that was the type of environment I grew up in. But Ms. Britton and many other teachers after her, they actually believe in their students, even though they were teaching in this school system that was called the worst school system in the US. And I remember Ms. Britton asked me one day, all right, Davis, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I guess I want to go to college. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. And she's like, great, where do you want to go? And at the time, I only knew 3 universities, or not even universities, colleges. I knew my local university college where a lot of students went to school. So it's about probably 2 miles away from my house. And it's our local community college. So it is, imagine, just where most local students go, but you would never know the name of it unless you lived in the area. The second place that I knew, because we were in the South and football was huge, was the University of Georgia, which was the #1 party drinking school for a bit in the United States. So that was my State University. And I was like, well, I kind of want to leave 2 miles because I didn't get to travel as a kid. So I was like, well, I don't want to go to our local community college. And I don't think I party well. So probably not University of Georgia. So, but I watch TV a lot. So I said, well, there's this school that keeps getting referenced. It's like Harvard. So I guess I want to go to Harvard. And so she said, great, Davis, good luck. And that was the end of that conversation. But I was pretty lucky that I had teachers who supported me. And how this all ties in is that eventually when I was in high school, I did have this goal that I wanted to go to Harvard or Yale, even though my path wasn't clean and that I was growing up in one of the worst communities in the US. And so to make it happen, what I ended up doing was, instead of trying to figure out how to get into Harvard, how to get into Yale, and how to recreate the wheel, I essentially said, well, there are people who are working at Harvard, there are people who are working at Yale who are students. They probably know how to get there. There are people at Columbia who knows how to get there, Cornell and so forth. So I said, all right, you know what, instead of, what I'm going to do is just read the newspaper. So for Harvard, I would read the Harvard Crimson. For Yale, I would use the Yale Daily News. And I would always go to the op-ed section because that's where the writers can just freestyle what they want to write. And I would just find my favorite writers. And I said, well, if they're really good writers, they can probably help me with my admission essay. They can probably help me with my SAT writing score and probably my reading score too for the SAT. And then for math, you know what? I'm just going to go look at the math department. And as you guys all know, your data is not sacred at all online, especially at universities, and they literally list all the students, all the emails. So I emailed the math major and said, well, maybe you guys can give me some hints on the math. And that's what I just did. I said, hey, I'm this kid from this poor neighborhood. People don't go to college. I want to go to Harvard or I want to go to Yale, whichever school they were at. And I would send like 50 of these emails, and I would get very little responses. But the ones I did get, they were willing to help me. So as a result, I was able to figure out what Harvard wanted in a admissions essay. I was able to figure out how to raise my SAT scores up without spending money and so forth. So every time someone recommended a book, I would literally walk about 2-3 miles to about 2.5 miles actually into my local library. I'd go in there and I would ask for those books, and they would say, oh, great, Davis, we can ship these in from South Georgia. So just come back in about a week. And I was like, great. And I would walk about 2.5 miles back to my house. And then 2 weeks later, walk back to go get the books. And that's pretty much how I paved my path. And eventually, you'll hear a little bit more about it. I was able to get full scholarships to pretty much every school, except for Columbia, which is funny because a lot of you guys went to Columbia. But I ended up choosing Yale because of the culture. And when I was at Yale, this is how out of my element I was. I remember at Yale, you still get to ask the same question. After you finish college, what do you want to do? It's kind of like after you finish high school, I go to college. After college, what do I want to do? And I remember one day just talking to that with a couple of friends I met my freshman year. And then one of them said, yeah, I want to be a banker. And in my mind, I thought to myself, wait, I don't get it. Andrew, wait. In my mind, I'm like, wait, Andrew went to Yale. Yale costs about $250,000 for 4 years, but he wants to graduate and become a banker. I literally know people back in my community who are bankers who are making about $12.50 an hour. I don't get why you want to be a banker. And of course, I don't say this in the dinner we were having. It was in my mind. I'm like, of course, it didn't occur to me that there's a difference between bank tellers who are bankers and bankers who are investment bankers on Wall Street. Completely did not know about that. So just to tell you how out of my element I was. So let alone knowing what consulting was. But every summer during my time at Yale, I would intern at a education company. And each of these education companies was headed by a CEO who I respected, because I wanted to be able to give back to my community. Coming back from a community that was called the worst high school in the US or worst community in the US for education, I wanted to be able to give back educationally to my community. So I worked at various education companies during my summers. And at the end of every summer, the CEO of the company, a man or woman, doesn't matter, would always approach and they would say, Davis, you know, you're a bright kid, you work really hard. Obviously you care about people, a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of potential in you, but you know what? You should consider something called consulting. And at the time, I was like, okay, sure. So this happened my freshman year. I was like, okay. Sophomore year, happened again. I was like, oh, it's happened twice. And then junior year, I was like, oh, okay. So 3 of my mentors think that by the time I graduate, I should go into consulting. So I said, well, time to research. So I go back my senior year of college, and I approached my best friend, Shirley, who had worked at a boutique consulting firm the summer before. And I said, hey, Shirley, so my mentors think that I should go into consulting. She was like, yeah, it's a great career. I said, great. So what do I have to do? It's like, oh, Davis, it's so easy. All you have to do is just get a resume together. I was like, okay, well, I don't have a resume right now, but I can get a resume together. I'll figure out how to do that. And then she's like, Davis, oh, and also you need to pass the case interview. And this is 3 weeks before the first rounds of interviews. And I say to her, what's a case interview? And she's like, Davis, if you don't know what a case interview is, I'm not sure it's going to work out. And I said, well, can you just give me one? And she gave me one. And it took me 2.5 hours to solve a case in a case book that was called Easy. In fact, it was the first case on it. The answer was so easy. The answer was basically a toll bridge company was seeing loss in profits, and they were wondering how to increase their profits. Answer was very easy. It was just increase the prices. And it took me 2.5 hours to get to that. I was like, oh, geez, this is not going to be an easy ride. But eventually I figured out a methodology to be able to master the casing process within 3 weeks, which I'll share with you later on today in our presentation. So that's a little bit more about my background into consulting. And eventually I would get into consulting. And at Bain & Company, I worked as a management consulting as well as on the recruiting team, volunteering as many events as I could, resume screens, interview days, going to recruiting events, answering questions, whatever it was. I loved recruiting because I love the process of being able to help people get into the recruiting process. And that's pretty much a little bit more background about me. Since we're going to share so much time, I wanted to invest some time so you know a little bit more about my background and to tell you that I didn't have this master plan of getting into consulting. I actually had to figure it out along the way, and it was a pretty messy process that might have just failed me, but eventually worked out that I was able to get into consulting and see both sides of it. And I'll share the system that I used and discovered and refined over time. So today I run a company called My Consulting Offer. So thank you for coming out to our presentation today. And so a little bit about us is that in the past 2 years, we've helped over 400 people begin their career in consulting. And we're the only company that I know who has special plans for every single person that we work with. So if you're an undergrad, there's a special plan for you. If you're an MBA, there's a special plan. If you're a PhD or postdoc or an experienced hire, there's a special plan for you. And 2 of our clients call us the closest thing to a guaranteed job offer in consulting. So it was a pretty cool nod to when they recorded their videos to tell us that, and you'll hear some of their stories. And of course, we average about a little less than 90, so about 88.5, 8.6% at this point in terms of people getting offers. So the average industry, as you guys might know, depending on the firm, is anywhere between 1% and 10%, depending on the firm. We get about 90% of the people we work with into consulting. But just because you're attending the conference or the workshop today, you're going to be closer to the 90% than you are to be the 1%. So it's great for you guys to be able to learn a lot of the techniques that's going to help you. And of course, we get offers every day. Like for example, this one came yesterday where Christine got an offer from BCG. She started working with us a little bit. So she had 9 sessions with us. So she got an offer. And then the day before that, we got another person who got an offer from McKinsey. So that's pretty much what we do. So you can get a sense that we get pretty much offers every single day. In fact, there was an offer this morning. I didn't have time to screenshot it and put it on the presentation, but that's pretty much what we do. But like I said, this event is different. You're going to discover techniques that you're not going to learn anywhere else that are proprietary as well. And they were things that I couldn't share when I was working at Bain. And in addition, you can't even work with me even if you wanted. So there's nothing for me to sell on this 8 hours. So it's pretty much just knowledge sharing in terms of it. As in, like I mentioned, in order for you to, even if you decide you want to work with us halfway through the event, there's an application and interview process you have to go through before you can even know what it's like to work with us and stuff like that. So this is why the different event is different, is you're going to learn a ton today. So how today is going to work is that we're going to have 3 big chunks of sessions, including a lunch. So the first thing we're going to talk about is answering, is consulting for you? There will be a Q&A section. So a lot of you guys, I know you guys have questions. So I'm going to have a formal session where you're going to be able to unmute yourselves or just chat if you guys are feeling it, or just do it privately to me and I'll announce it. But we'll have a Q&A session where you can pretty much ask me anything about that section as well. So it'll come up. There'll be literally big letters that say Q&A. That way, I make sure that you learn everything about the section in case a lot of the questions you'll find are going to be answered in future slides. Afterwards, we're going to talk about how to make your application stand out. We'll have a Q&A as well as a break there. As in, during any of the Q&A sessions, if you want to take a break, feel free to take a break. I'm going to be here all day because you guys are investing time in me. And plus, I have the energy to go all day long, actually. So last workshop we did was like 10 hours straight. I think I only had a 5-minute lunch break to eat a sandwich. So we go all day. But of course, you guys should definitely go get your restroom breaks, come back, get water, whatever you guys need. And we'll have a lunch break roughly around 1 p.m. and it will last until 2:30. So an hour and a half to go and get lunch and to come back. And so during lunch, it'll be completely offline. So I'll leave the camera on, but everyone will get lunch. I'm going to get lunch, and then we're going to come back and resume so you guys are fresh. And then in the afternoon, we're going to talk about how to walk into your interview with confidence. And then we'll share some of the bonuses that you're going to be getting for attending the entire workshop today. Sound good, guys? Awesome. All right, so there's 3 big ideas I want you to leave today with. First is that consulting is for you if you enjoy learning at a fast pace about a variety of subjects. You don't know what you want to do, but you enjoy working with smart people to get an immediate impact. Or like I like to say it, you're basically a nerd with ADHD. That's a great way to want to know if you want to be in consulting. The second big idea is that you can get your foot in the door at a major consulting firm, even if you don't have a brand name on your resume, a perfect GPA, or any business experience. And then finally, you can learn how to master the case interview process, even if you don't have a business background. So those are the 3 big goals that I have for you today. And I want to make sure that we stay accountable to each of those goals.